Well, hey there, sweet peas. Welcome back to Friendless. I'm your host, James Avramenko, back with a brand new episode. And this week, I'm bringing a long-threatened episode that I recorded months and months and months ago before my little mentee bee. I'm chatting with the political organizer, clown, filmmaker, actress, and all-around multi-talented friend, Amy Lester. We explore the pitfalls of the clown community, embracing life's inherent lack of safety, and advocating for yourself by any means. So it's time to sit back, get comfy, set your volume at a reasonable level, and enjoy my interview with the one and only Amy Lester here on Friendless. I've been having a thing recently, actually, where I've been realizing that a lot of my closest friends were starting to hit that time period of having been friends for 20 years. You know, we're hitting that window, and it's kind of fucking me up. And this week, I have a friend who, you know, I haven't seen in person in the flesh in going on 15 years probably, but has kind of like bounced in and out of my life throughout the years. And she's a political organizer, she's a clown, she's a filmmaker, she's an incredible actress, amongst a myriad of other things. The one, the only Amy Lester. How are you doing today?
Oh my gosh, James. I'm great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. You know, it's funny. I was just having. I have this same conversation many times on the show, and I was just having it offline yesterday about the like kind of like non-starter question of how are you? Because like
Mhm.
you know, my brain always wants to be like, how honest do you want me to be? Because I'll fucking let it rip if you know. and and so what I actually want to ask you to get started is a much more woo woo question, but I think more fun. Is what's one thing that's bringing you joy this week?
This week, I'm getting ready for there's new moon kind of Scorpio energy, I think. And
Hmm.
I think that's what's going on. I'm trying to catch up on kind of my mundane astrology for the week. So I think I'm just kind of getting into that. I feel myself like picking up like plates and like wiping underneath, like whatever's kind of that, like there's grime in my apartment and I kind of want to nanu. I think
Yeah,
that's what's giving me joy right now.
I love it. Are you do you like cleaning? Does that bring
No,
you?
no,
Oh, okay.
no.
Because it's a funny thing. I for the longest time for years I would avoid cleaning. I think there are still like legends told of some of my apartments at university. But in since moving to Vancouver especially, I've really like rediscovered like the kind of like therapy of like washing your toilet, you know?
Oh yeah. I have big abandonment issues that come up when I'm cleaning. Like I get kind of
Sure.
overwhelmed and I feel like I'm 3 and I'm like trying to put the dish in the sink and I don't know what to do and everyone's like, "Hurry up, we're gonna be late."
Yes.
My
Oh my
ADD
god.
trauma.
I fuck though. Like, you know, I think you are tapping into something that I don't even always recognize is definitely there. And I think about every once in a while. It
I'm just
does
like,
pop
if
up.
somebody loved me, they'd be here and help me clean this dish because I don't want to do because I'm all by myself and I have to do it and it makes me feel sad. Yeah, it's crazy.
Exactly.
I
And
know.
and and it's, and the same too. I think the other thing, the other piece of that too, is this idea of like it doesn't feel like I was ever actually shown how to do a lot of these things. I was just told to do them, and then when I did them wrong, I was told I was wrong. But I was never actually like corrected. I was just shamed, right? And so that like that's you know that's a sticky memory, right?
Ah, that's a tough one. But hey, that's sort of like my general bullshit. But when I do feel like drawn to like, zero in on like a dust bunny and like,
Mhm.
make it clean because, it's grimy or something, like I do feel I get satisfaction from that. But I would say I don't enjoy the like mundane kind of washing up, putting things away, like that kind of I struggle.
Sure, sure. I mean, I feel like that's not uncommon.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's go back a little bit. You know, we were talking before recording about like we were trying to kind of get our story straight, for lack of a better
Yeah.
way of putting it, of like how the fuck did we meet? You know, and you know what I find so fascinating about you is that you're somebody who in in my life in person you kind of like you popped up and made this massive impact and then kind of floated off into the wind, you know, and but we have, you know, at least from my perspective, I've seen little snippets of what you've been up to throughout the years, and I'm curious, because you're currently in such a different kind of career place than you were when I knew you,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm really curious to hear about what took you from being such an active, artist. You were a performer, you were a clown, you were an actor, and now you're this like really engaged political organizer. You're working with I don't know if I can name the party, but like you're working with
Yeah,
you're working
yeah,
with actual government bodies, and
yeah,
and so
yeah, yeah,
tell
yeah.
me about
So,
that journey.
well, yeah. So, I mean, that's a great question, and I guess I don't get to tell it often, or I don't like telling it
Sure.
often. But real story is I moved to Toronto in like 2013 after I went to Gaulier, my Philippe Gaulier, and did this clown shit. And I was like, trying to get my sort of act together. And was trying to do a one-man show, and I started doing stand-up, and I was doing, all this stuff. And I was just grinding it out on stage. Like I got so much stage time. Like I was just friggin' burning it up and doing stuff. And kind of trying to get a commercial. Like, I had an agent. I was like kind of hauling my ass like across the city and blow drying my hair, and trying to get these fucking commercials. And I never once got a manicure. So all these times when I like showed my hands, like my hands looked like shit, and I was just like a dirty clown, like trying to, sell whatever it was, McDonald's. And I booked one TV show. I got to be on Man Seeking Woman. It was the fucking best day of my
Wow.
life. Eric Andre and me were like shooting the shit, and I was like,
Wow.
whatever. And everyone was like, we love her. We want her to like maybe come back, whatever. And I just like never booked anything else
Yeah.
for like 3 years. And I was, um, dating somebody at the time, and I kind of slowed down a little bit with like the scene, like I kind of got
Mhm.
grossed out by like all the shitty guys and all the kind of like
Mhm.
drinking and the kind of bullshit and the nonsense of it all.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to kind of be at home, like, because and I felt like, oh, this is a whole other life, like, to not do that and not to be kind of drawn by that. And then, so I went back to school to study entrepreneurship and small business because I was like, oh, maybe I'll have like, a theater company or something, like maybe I'll
Yeah.
open up a thing, I'll do something, I'll make a business. And I got like rent evicted from my apartment. I started dealing with like getting hardcore rent evicted, and I was like going kind of insane. Like I was having a complete like Saturn return. Like, I don't know if you're like, but there's a whole podcast of astrology behind all that as well. Cause like
Yeah.
the people in my building, we all had birthdays the same, and we were all losing our home at the same time. And like
Oh
people, it
my
was like
god.
wild.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I was really, really hopeless and kind of shattered and heartbroken because when I
Yeah.
lost this apartment, I was never going to be able to like survive on my like waitressing money, and like
Mhm.
hoping that I was going to like maybe get a TV job. Like that was like that I was growing out. I grew up in a really harsh way, and I just like couldn't really, and I really didn't want to do it. Like I was like, I
Yeah.
really don't, I fucking would feel this like gross feeling when I would get like an audition. It'd be like, boom, like you have to be there. And I'd be like, oh, what is this bullshit? It didn't
Mhm.
feel creatively that it was really fulfilling. And at this meantime, I was doing all this stuff with Paul Bellini and my buddies. Like we had like a show, and there was people that were just calling me being like, Amy, like I have this great project and I want you to kind of do it. And so, I felt like it was cooler and better to me if I didn't care, if it was like,
Yeah.
fucking my job.
Mhm.
And this political world came upon me kind of. I lost my home. I felt very devastated. I kind of had a breakdown. I didn't know what to do. I felt very lost. And the candidate for Davenport canvassed me. I was like chain smoking with like my friend. I was like, ugh. And he was like, hey, like, I don't want people to go through this. Like, I really don't think this is right and whatever. And I just kind of had no job. I had nothing to do. And I was like really, really hopeless.
Yeah.
And so I thought, yeah, you know what? I'll try to help you get elected.
Fuck
And I
yeah.
grinded it out, and I canvassed every day, and I met these people, and they just kept hiring me for different things. So, I've been a fundraiser. I've been an organizer. I've been a member of the executive in Davenport. I work as a constituency assistant now for the member in provincial member in Davenport, and it's a whole other life. There's,
Yeah.
it's weird. I was like, I was almost 30, and I was like, there's kind of got to be more to life than just like not booking commercials, you know?
Absolutely.
And I also felt like I really had to justify, like, I don't say my poverty, but like, like my choice to kind of not be able to do things. Like, people, my siblings are older than I am. And so, if they want to go on a trip, like, as the baby of the family, like somebody might throw me a couple bucks and buy me a ticket for a trip, but like I'm not going to
Mhm.
get trips for the rest of my life. Like I'm not going to have like other people taking care of things. You know what I mean? Whatever.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah,
you know, um
100%.
so I kind of felt like, I had to be really committed to being an actress in order to be living like that.
Yeah.
Is that
Wow,
shitty? Don't put that on. I don't know.
yeah, no, you're tapping into something that I'm really like, just that framing. It's something that I have like really wrestled with myself, because as the third child, as the youngest of the three,
Yeah.
you know, I live on the other side of the country of my entire family, and so like, they have the whole unit, right? They do all the holidays together, they do all the birthdays together, they raise the grandkids together, all the things, and I get to make it out like every couple years I come out for a Christmas kind of thing, because
Yeah.
like I have never been able to afford like a plane ticket, and so I have been so reliant on like somebody
Yeah,
supporting
and,
me for
it's
that,
no
and that
shade to them,
sucks.
like, it's no shade to me either, because
Yes, no, yeah,
if I was feeling really, like, to my heart, like, I am living in my truest purpose, and, like, this is the sacrifice that I wanna be making, and I can, like, sort of justify that to myself, then it's doesn't matter, like, it's not about money, like, it's not about,
yes,
but I think, like, there's more to life than, like, starving for your art.
that's right. Yes,
And I'm now starving for the art because I really miss all that.
yeah.
I
But
really
then
miss
there's
all that.
also there's the like there's the balancing act of like the way the way art is so inherently and fundamentally and like spiritually counter to capitalism,
Mhm.
and so it's like, because to me, like, art in its purest expression is following an impulse and just letting it ride and seeing where it takes you, whereas capitalism is like the purest expression of like mechanism. It's just it's a rooted hierarchy, it's a system, and so they're just like fundamentally baseline incompatible. And when we make our artists have to like operate within a system just to survive, they just can't make art. It's why we're seeing now, there's the new generations of actors in Hollywood, but like they're all children of actors or of executives or of and like there's no way for anyone to break into any of these systems without already having a ticket in or having somebody kind of picking up the bill for them.
I was
And
just
I
in
do
New
I
York for
sure as
2
fuck
days.
don't have that.
Yeah, I went to my friend's wedding, and I was just in New York for 2 days.
Hmm.
And honestly, that amount of time there and then coming back to the city where everybody is like, there's no respect for art, there's no respect for the tenant class, there's no respect
Hmm.
for like the diversity of, you know um perspectives,
Hmm.
and it's like awful. It's
Yeah.
super awful. But at the same time, like, people are making it work,
Yes, very much so.
and we kind of have to get our shit together and either, like, whine and bitch and like take our, antidepressants and, don't drink
Yeah.
and stay on the up and up, or else like work really hard or whatever. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's not really.
Because that's only like the money side of it, right? Like there is still the other piece of like, well, if you want to make art, make art. It's just that it's like that takes time and energy as well, and it's hard to have that energy when you don't have your rent covered or your
Yeah, and
groceries.
Marky Mark has a chain of friggin' hamburger restaurants.
Exactly. Exactly. Pray up, you know?
So what is he, like, a fucking not a committed to his career because he has a hamburger restaurant? Like, people have you can do other shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't
100%
make
you
you
can.
less of a thing. Like, how you know, if you're able to do that thing sustainably only, then great. Nobody actually gives that up for, like, something else, I don't think.
Yeah. Interesting. Could you say more about that? Because I think that's a really like I really like that analysis of like is Mark Wahlberg less of an artist now because of his like I don't know,
You would
and
never
it's like
say that about Mark Wahlberg. You would never say that about Mark Wahlberg.
yeah,
Nor would you say
yeah,
that about really anyone who has, like, multiple streams of, like, income or, like, people who are doing different things to survive and do whatever, like,
yeah,
I think, like, being a professional artist honestly kind of forces you to have more than one way of, like, selling yourself. Like, is
right,
art always for sale? Is your art
right.
always for sale, right?
Exactly,
And does that
exactly.
make me an artist? Like, am I not an artist when I go to my job and, get volunteers to go out and get out the vote for this person? Do I
I
stop
agree.
do I stop being a clown? Hell
That's
no.
exactly right. No, not at all. Not even a little bit. You know,
Not even for
and
5 seconds.
yeah, yeah. And if anything, like, and that's very much where I've begun to land in my life is that it's like obviously my passion is writing and my passion is creativity, but I kind of in a lot of ways don't want that to pay my bills. I kind of like it being, just what it is. I when I find the space and when I find the time, I do it, and the rest of my time is spent doing other jobs. I love my job, my day job, and yeah, like being a teacher I don't think changes the fact that in my heart I'm a writer, you know what I mean? And I think that's another piece of that whole puzzle of like I think when we're young, and maybe it's a Canada thing, I don't know, but it's like um uh, it often it feels like you're conditioned to see yourself as a eternal failure um if you don't immediately become a successful artist, if you
I
do
had
have to
acting
get a
teachers
job.
we had acting teachers that said you should never be a stage manager because if you opt to
Yeah.
do a stage management job, you're never gonna get an acting job. And, it was, like, ridiculous, but at that time, like, I was growing up in Ottawa, like, I'm like, if I believe it enough, like, I'll do it. And, honestly, James, like, I got into all these acting schools and everything.
Hmm.
I got, like, really good auditions, and I did that shit, and it was, like, weird. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
they were weird, I was weird. I didn't wanna be there. But
Yeah.
when they're like, "If you don't wanna be here, you can go, like, the door is right there." I was, like, literally going, like, "I don't wanna hear it."
Bye.
But I was like, "No, I didn't say that, I didn't say that." And scared. I was
Right.
so scared
Yeah.
not to be that. I didn't know who I was,
Hmm.
and they didn't know
Hmm.
who the fuck I was.
Hmm. There's an interesting. I was just thinking about this morning about when I was teaching, like I was teaching theater for a couple years in Saskatoon, and one of the programs I was the lead of was this it was called the Young Company, or I think that's what it was called. I can't even remember. It was years ago.
Right.
Anyway, it was like a group of like they were like 15 to 19-year-olds, and one of the students had been in the program a couple years, and there'd been other teachers before, and one of the things he said to me at the end of my program was that he was like, "I really liked your training, but I felt like our group was less of a family than other programs before." And I said to him, I was like, "Well, that was my intention because we're not a family. We're working on a play
Mm,
together." And it
mm.
got me thinking about how teachers will, and this is kind of loaded language, but they'll kind of like lure in young people into these communities under the pretense of like we're building a family together. And I think that's really predatory in a way because it plays on, often people who get into the arts are people who are lost, people who are confused, people who don't always know who they are. And they find a community within, but then it's like it's not a safe community, it's not a safe family, and I don't like the. Maybe it's that I just like I get my back up when anyone in power calls a group their family because I'm like, no, 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 we're
Yeah, I really
working
didn't
together.
have the family. I didn't get that vibe at all from my
Mm,
experience. I felt that it was more elitist
Mm-hmm.
and that it was more like, you know, um you're here, therefore you are in. Like, it was like, you're in this room because you are the 30 most talented people that auditioned out of like many thousands. Like,
Right.
if you make it all the way to the end of this, you will be a professional working in Stratford and everywhere. Like, you will have the career that you dream of at, yeah, as you're 18 years old. And today is the beginning of the fucking you making it. And by the way, you're terrible, you're horrible, your body's weird, maybe you're not supposed to be here.
Yeah.
You're failing, like, you know, only, and now we're gonna cut 10 people. Like, no matter if even if every
Yeah.
person in this room is as good as we thought they were, we still have to cut 10 of you. So only 20 of you are gonna be in second year. Like, that whole thing. Like, and that's where they go, and then people
Yeah.
believe it.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. I mean, it's culty. It's ugh. I want to follow a thread back to part of the theme of the show.
Right.
Because what I often explore on here is the idea of friendships and communities. Those are the two
Sure.
big like pillars, and we'll get to both. But I always like to start at the question of friendship, because it's like I feel like in a certain way, community is an it's like a multitude of friends, whereas like friendship is the dilution of the one to one, and the question, it can be answered in, I feel like every single person has a different definition of it, but I'm really curious about your sort of personal experience with kind of the term friend, and like what to you does it mean to be a friend? Not necessarily good bad, but just sort of like what is a friend to you?
Um, well, I think that in my life, some of the best friendships I've had, like, um, you know, maybe some turbulent times or some kind of, like, you know, conflict, really, like
Hmm.
some degree of conflict. And those have turned out to be like the strongest friendships that I have, and like the most cherished
Mm.
friendships that I have. And ultimately, I think like the people that I love and cherish that are my friends, I can have just met them, or I could have known them for a long time, or, you know, they could be kind of busy right now and, you know, doing other things. I haven't, you know, really talked to them, and you're not even sure if you have that much in common with them. But, you know, there's people that you really love because I feel like you kind of know them. Like, you can kind of see
Hmm.
who they are, and you can kind of see their light, and your light supports their light, and that makes them your friend.
Hmm. I like that. Does it play into sort of the idea of like authenticity in a way? Like
Yeah.
when somebody shows up as who they are and they connect that
Yeah.
way.
And you know what? Like, I had really turbulent, like painful friendship breakups
Mm.
like when I was like 20, you know,
Hmm.
and whatever. Like, those kind of like, just you wake up and you realize like, holy shit, you know, this person is never going to stop actually treating me this way. Like, they
Yeah.
think like they think I'm this way, right? And this person just looked at me. I was heartbroken. I felt so like betrayed and so hurt and so confused, and I couldn't believe that someone I cared about, you know, was capable of this. And, you know, she looked at me and she just said, "But we'll always be friends."
Yeah. What the fuck?
And I kind of went, "That's what you think.
Yeah.
You think that even though I'm here about to vomit with pain and confusion and distress,
Yeah.
that will always be friends." So,
Yeah.
oh, you know,
It's a strange like there's like there's an entitlement behind that, but there's also this like kind of like over the last couple of years, especially with the experiences I've had with different connections, it's often like what I found is like the thing that's expressed is often like masking the opposite thing, so it's like an expectation of connection is really like a fear of disconnection, and there's often this sort of like counter, say one thing to try and get the opposite, and I can't help feeling like so much of that comes out of like a scarcity and comes out of a fear from that person.
mhm.
um um And that just really, I don't know, that really spikes up my empathy, and it also spikes up my like get the fuck out of there. You know what I mean? Like, because it's
Well,
like
and
that's
that's
not
the
on
thing,
you
like,
to solve, right?
I have a friend who I haven't called in, like, a month and a half. Like, I told her I'd call her, and then I had to go out of town, and the thing is she's older, she's a senior,
Mm,
and so she doesn't have, like, text, like, I can't just, like, kind of quickly check in, like, if I call this person, like, they like to talk for a while, and I kinda have to be in
yeah.
the mood, and I have to be kind of ready to do that, and also, if I'm gonna say, like, "Oh, do you need help with something?" Like, I wanna actually be available to help if that comes up, so
Yeah.
I haven't called this person,
Mm,
and, you know, I feel like kind of a shitty friend.
mm.
I do feel like a shitty friend, and in the past, this person has been nice about it when I've been like, "Hey, I know I was supposed to call you a month ago, like, are you good?" And they're, like, kind of usually happy to hear from me and stuff, so, like, they deserve better from me.
Well, but I mean, that to me is like a question of that's a two-sided coin, right? You know, because it's like there's personal capacity and there's personal reality, and it's
Yeah,
like, you know, something I'm always working on with myself is my kind of people-pleasing tendencies, which is like I have nothing to give, but I think this person wants more, so I'm gonna keep giving anyway, you know?
yeah,
And then I'm burnt out, and then I get resentful, and then I get shitty, you know? So it's like you know, if that conversation is open and understanding on both sides, then it's not, you know, we were saying before recording, you know, one of the tools I've been working on through my DBT group that I'm a part of is you know, mindful language, and one of the
mm,
things is recognizing good bad and
mm,
instead calling it like effective ineffective,
mhm,
to just
mhm.
remove that judgment, you know, because like, you know, from my perspective, listening to you is that it's like you're living your life and you're doing a lot, you know, and like
I can't
it doesn't sound to
imagine
me like,
calling
you
this
know,
person and saying like, "Oh, hey, we'll always be friends, so, like, it's okay
right.
that I fucked you over. Like, it's okay that I promised I'd call you and then I didn't, but we'll always be friends." You know, like,
Right.
I just think that'd be so shitty.
Yeah, but it's also that's not the same situation, right? You know,
I
because you're not
know,
abusing this person, you're
I
just
know, but
living,
still,
you
like,
know.
imagine that was an excuse to just, like, be a shitty
Yeah.
friend and be like, "Oh, it's okay, we'll always be friends." Like,
And that's the negotiation part. That's
ugh,
what I mean, right?
yeah,
That's the like, you know, and trusting that the other person is an adult and is able to make their choices. And if they are hurt, they get to communicate that and they get to say, "Hey, you suck." You don't
yeah.
have to tell yourself you suck before they have, you know? Like, you know, being nice to yourself, right?
What is your favorite film?
That's such a fun question. I
Is
love
it?
that. It is. You know, okay, I'm gonna give you the full scale. I'm just gonna go like unmasked ADHD answer, and I'm instead of just giving you like a quick little, because I could just say Jurassic Park, easy, no problem.
Oh,
You know,
yes, we just had
uh,
that Jurassic Park episode. Yeah, yeah,
right, you know.
yeah,
But it's like the thing about what I love about questions like that, like what's your favorite thing, what's your, you know, is that it's like it brings with it, for me personally, I'm somebody who I do tend to try to avoid like ranking stuff. I try really hard to be like, to not do like this is the best thing, and if you don't like it, you're wrong, you know. um Something I was always trying to teach my students back in the day was always to say, instead of saying like, you know, this was a good play, this is a bad play, but to instead be like, well, this resonated with me, this didn't,
mm,
you know.
mhm,
And it's the same way that like, you know, I could hate a certain music. I mean, there's very little music that I don't like, so it's maybe a bad example, but like, you know, someone could say like, "Oh, I hate country" or whatever, and it's like, no, you just haven't heard the right country song. You know, that music isn't bad; it's just not for you, right? So whenever I think about like my favorite things, I tend to more run with like what's been kind of resonating with me lately and what have I been enjoying lately. Um, so yeah, like I say, Jurassic Park is the movie that I could just go back to anytime, every time, no matter what. But recently, I have been back on a kick of I watched The Silence of the Lambs 3 times this month.
wow,
It's like, I don't
sure,
know. There's something wrong with me because I find that movie bizarrely. The only word that comes to mind is comforting. Like it's like a
yeah,
very like
sure, sure.
it's like a I can just come back to it and just enjoy it. You know. Um,
Did you ever hear that song? It rubs the lotion on its skin. Da, da, da.
No.
It gets the hose again.
I have
It
to.
puts the lotion in the basket. It puts the lotion in the basket.
Is this just somebody else singing the lyrics, or
Yeah,
did
yeah,
they
yeah.
remix his?
Yeah, it's
Oh
just
my
like a
god!
song.
I am writing this down because I have to listen to this afterwards. I'm going to,
You
and
can put
for
it in.
listeners, for
Put
I
it
was going
in.
to say for listeners, I'm going to put it in the show notes,
Yeah.
so we can all enjoy it together because that's fucking incredible.
It puts the
Um,
lotion in the basket. It puts the fucking lotion in the basket. Or whatever.
the like I obviously I recognize that the messaging in the movie is problematic for the trans community, and at the same time too, that scene is what made me love Goodbye Horses for the rest of my life. Like that song just like is in my bones, and I love it, and I love that scene, and I love it. Would you fuck me?
I
Like
mean, it's really true though. It's really dated and really like
yes,
there's some things about it that are really kind of awful. And at the same time, like it's very kind of sticks with you, like,
oh
just
yeah,
the way it's shot and the lighting and certain kind
hmm,
of like weird sort of spooky sounds and stuff. Like
yeah.
it's cool. Like you can kind of rock with it.
Yeah. I mean, also like Jodie Foster is iconic.
Yeah,
Fucking good
totally.
old Clarice. How about you? What's your? Do you have a top? Do you have a go to? Do you have one that's sticking out lately?
Um, Honestly, I think my favorite movie right now is Eyes Without a Face, Les Yeux Sans Visage.
Mm. I don't know this one.
It is really, really fucking great.
I'm
It's
assuming
a horror
French.
film from it's French. It came out in like 1965, 1963.
Okay,
It is basically, I'll tell you why I love it.
please.
It is so French to me, this film. There's this terrible mad scientist who's obsessed with like, plastic surgery and like breaking records and like making innovative science with like recovering people from like being mangled in like horrible
Mm.
ways.
Hmm.
And he's winning awards and everything. And he is this daughter who he wants to fix her face, and she has to wear this mask, and he keeps experimenting on her to fix her face. And these girls go missing from Paris, and they're like, oh no, where are they going? Right.
Fuck yeah.
And she is so sad in her delicate little face, like a blank face, a mask that's like a totally no expression. So the
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
time she's like, la, 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 like really beautiful and really special. And he loves her. Like he's this terrible, crazy scientist man is like holding his daughter and with love. And like he says, like, don't be afraid, like I know how to, I'm taking care of you. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Oh, this sounds fabulous. It actually came up recently in a podcast I listened to from the director. Her name is escaping me right now, but she just wrote and directed the Substance.
Oh yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
and
Yeah, she's French too. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, you should watch it. Like, and I love that. Like, and that's my Instagram. Like, I'm always kind of, if you follow me on there, you always see me kind of going off on my bullshit.
About French film or about
Yeah.
just this one
I
movie
always
in general.
just share all this, like, shit. Don't put that in the podcast that I do that. Embarrassing. I just outed myself.
I'll cut that. Cut the Instagram. Just give. Let me mark the time. Let me mark the time. 3:32. 3:33. Um. Um. French film is so fascinating to me though. One of the things that the director of The Substance brought up was that she films in America because the French audiences don't tend to enjoy or so she says they don't tend to enjoy genre films. They're
Mm.
much more invested in like the kind of rooted the sort of human stories, and so stories like The Substance don't necessarily play very well in America, or excuse me, in France. which I find so fascinating because the French movies I see are always like, maybe it's because they're exported, I don't know, but like they tend to be so genre heavy, and they tend to be like,
I'm
I
sure it
don't know,
feels that way
mind
because it's
fucks, you know?
French, right? Like, it
Yeah,
feels that way because it's like foreign language, like, um,
exactly.
so yeah, but that's the thing, like Amelie and like,
Yeah.
whatever, this like and Tintin and whatever, like, not it's not a cliche really. It
Mm,
just is what it is.
yeah. Whereas here, it's like it's in its own little weird box because of
Yeah,
the
and you can
yeah.
kinda like it or not, like, it's kinda like, "Oh, Tintin, I hate that show," like, or you go like, "Oh, French, you must love Tintin and fucking The Petit Prince, like, boo, 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 poutine,
Yeah.
poutine," like, it's just like, that's kinda rude, right, to do
Yeah.
that, but, like,
Yeah. Oh my god, though. Actually, speaking of, I just reread the Little Prince for the first time, like since I was a kid. I just reread it this year, and it's fucking incredible. Oh
I
my
got
god,
a
do you
Little
have it
Prince
tattooed?
tattoo. Yeah,
Oh, I love that.
it's a
For
sheep.
Oh, oh, so cute. Very, very, very helpful visual for the audio platform. For listeners, Amy has a little Petit Prince sheep on her ankle, and it's
And I did a kind of clown
adorable.
thing. Tell them about I did a kind of clown move.
And it was very, it had that very practiced technique of looking clumsy while being entirely in control, right? It's a gorgeous pratfall.
Oh, I got invited to do a cabaret a couple months ago. My friend was like, "Hey, do you wanna co-host this show with me?" And, so I did a red-nosed outfit, whole thing, clown show again for the first time. It was totally fun.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Clowning in general is something that I have such a fucking admiration for, and I've never I've never done any classes. I've never done anything. And I know a couple people who have gone, quite deep into it, yourself in that mix, and I have such an admiration for it, and I love it so much, and I just like, I don't even know where I would start. I feel it almost feels like to me, in my brain, I link clowning with pro wrestling, which are two things that I wish I had tried when I was 20, and now I feel like too old, you know. But can you do you think can you get into it when you're an old person?
Oh, yeah. I think so. I mean, to be a clown is to have a fun, to pretend, to have a
Mm,
pleasure, to be an idiot, to kind of be, to be a clown is to be, excited, like, maybe they don't recognize me, maybe the audience, like, they think I'm
mm,
really Hamlet, I'm gonna trick them,
yeah.
you know? Um, you have a plastic poo, like Philippe, like my teacher would say, like my teacher would say, he said, "The clown, he goes to a party, in his pocket, plastic poo."
It's perfect.
The whole time he's, having fun, but he knows at any moment
He
he
can
could be
pull it
the
out.
star of the party with the
Yeah.
plastic poo.
And that's true power right there.
That is the
Yeah.
clown, okay? So
Yeah.
this is the path that I walk as a clown
Yeah.
in the world.
Yeah.
Downtown clown, she's not messing around.
But I mean, that's one of the things that I find so interesting about, like, I mean, there's so many different examples in art and just life in general, but it's this idea of like, it's so often the opposite thing that holds the true, control, or the true power. The idea that, like, you know vulnerability is the truest expression of human power. It's not like muscles or guns, or it's like
Mhm,
how authentically vulnerable can you be? That's the true control of the self. And in the
mhm,
same way that, like, in a sort of a social dynamic, like, the fool is often seen as like, oh, I wouldn't want to be there, but it's like they hold the truest, like, potential control of the room in so many ways. And I think that leads to questions of, like, I guess, like, what even is control and what is power. But But
Well, that's the
I
thing too, like, clowns, like, they are very powerful. I think that's why they're
mhm,
sort of demonized a little bit in culture.
mhm,
I think they're sort of like, outcasts, you know?
mhm,
And if you expand your definition of a clown to include, Buffon and like certain types of like, archetypal characters, even like commedia, you know,
mhm, mhm,
and working in that kind of style with play, like, with there's really
mm,
just play based character work, and going
yeah.
and then, also in satire and in things like that. So if you look at specifically the Buffon, like these are nasty clowns. They come from the swamp. Like they're, people are supposed to be created in God's image, like in medieval Europe, like, human beings are created in God's image. So if you're not in God's image, you're banished from, society, and you live in this swamp and you get to kind of do whatever you want. You can like, you're heathen, like they're heathens. They fucking eat, like God doesn't give a shit about them. They're disgusting, they're deformed,
Yeah.
and they can speak the truth, right? And they come
Yeah.
descend upon the town and they lock up all the actors, and
Mhm.
they once a year they put on a show.
Oh my god, this sounds like paradise.
And for them, the best outcome is the king, when he sees the show, he recognizes himself and instantly he dies from laughter. So these are
I love it.
nasty creatures, but they're clowns too.
Yeah.
So, they can
Yeah.
scare the shit out of you too. Like,
Yeah.
they kind of hit the other nerve. And I struggle with that. Like, I have embarrassed myself. Like I have said really like totally rude things. Like I have like fucked over. Like I'm socially fucked up sometimes as a clown.
Sure. Yeah. But you're allowed to be. Maybe. I don't know.
Here, you know.
That leads me really nicely into this the next piece of the friendship community equation thing. This idea of I think community for me has become very I don't know what the right word for it is. It overlaps with the question of like it overlaps with questions of culture, it overlaps with questions of society, it overlaps with just social interactions. And again, it's one of those terms that you know the more I look at it, it's like a really simple word, but the more I look at it, the more broad, the more vast, the more complicated it becomes. And I'm really curious in your experience, from your perspective, what does first of all, what is community to you, and then sort of building off of that, like how do you participate within community, or how would you like to participate within community?
Well, I think that a community is essentially a group of people with something in common. Your communities, your neighborhood, your work, your sexual orientation, your gender, your age, whatever.
Hmm.
These things kind of interact. And what I like to do in my life to show up and be a part of the many communities that I belong to in different contexts, and also with different, perhaps different hats on, you
Hmm.
know, professionally, personally, whatever. Um, Sometimes we're part of communities that don't always make us feel good. We could be part of like
Mm.
extended families with parents and uncles that we don't like to see, or in-laws, or our own families, whatever, or other things like bosses that we don't like, jobs that
Yeah.
we don't want to go to, all these
Y-
things, right?
yeah.
um how I like to show up and be part of this community, this life, is to really just help people feel seen, help people feel
Mm.
supported, and try to make things have an impact, whatever it is we're
Mm.
doing, like let's just leave it all on the floor,
Mhm.
rock this, like, if you have a self tape to do, like, bring the noise, like put it all down here, uh go to this open mic, whatever, do this clown shit. I was supposed to do this burlesque class and I had to change it because of work, but I was going to do this whole burlesque journey this year, this fall.
Mhm.
And maybe I should have done.
Uh, I mean, you're still alive. You could still, burlesque will always be there, right?
Yeah, just taking off the glove.
Yeah.
I was so bad when I was trying to be a clown. Like every single time Goliath would be like, "You're unfuckable. You're horrible. You're so ugly. You're so boring." And I just trying to be fuckable, but I wasn't. Like he was like, "You're a fucking Mongol." Like he'd be like, "You're
My God. What a thing to yell at a student. You're unfuckable. That's
unfuckable woman from Canada."
Wow. Iconic sentence.
And I was trying to be Ophelia too. I was like doing this, and he says, "Hello, you see this actor, and you think definitely they fuck." Me and Hamlet. Or he says, "Oh, you think perhaps one of them in a deep coma, the other one's deeply drunk."
I feel like as like a Chiron, like as like a CNN talking head to be the most unfuckable woman in Canada. That's like a pretty fucking top tier title.
He called this other girl the Virgin from Canada. I don't know if she was a virgin, but yeah.
Oh fuck, brutal. Um
Yeah.
um
My Goliath stories are great, and I've never been invited onto a podcast to speak to them all.
to
So
share them, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Well, one thing that I think that's really interesting that you're tapping into is this idea that community doesn't equate safety, and
No.
I think that that's something that I personally recognize, but I don't know is always evocative in the term. I think often in the conversation when we talk about communities, it's with the intention of implying a safety net, and I in my experience, communities are actually deeply unsafe in a lot of ways. You have to actively create the safety for yourself first, um um and I I don't know. I just find that an interesting kind of paradigm again of this idea of like the networks that we build come with the intention of security, but they don't always build it inherently, right?
I mean, I really love like so this other weird thing about me is that I think I have a little bit of an issue with like authority.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really tough for me when I was working with Philippe and like becoming a clown. But then now I feel like I really learned what it means for me and what it kind of brings out in me, the good and the bad, the dragon within, playing with
Yeah.
that game of like, I fucking hate this asshole and he can't tell me what to do. I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
listen to him, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Um, but like working in the NDP and like helping people fight for better things
Yeah.
and learning from different activists and organizing and honestly in labor,
Mm.
the organizing and the community kind of enterprise that it takes to like really get everybody, all these people, you have to talk to them all,
Mm-hmm.
like if all of a sudden something happens like a natural disaster, like guess what, my community is every single person that lives within 2 blocks of my house.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
all have to help each other out, like whatever benefits everybody else, you know that's kind of how you're going to look at it. But are you looking at like the educated white community? Am I part of that? Like what does that mean, like?
Mm-hmm.
And also because I'm suddenly sharing a community with my neighbor doesn't mean that I automatically belong to whatever it is they identify with. I'm not a
Yeah.
nurse, I'm not a racialized person, I'm not a newcomer, I'm not a parent, I'm not a
Mm-hmm.
queer person, like whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not like porous in that way. Like we intersect, but we're not porous. We're not like going to mold into one big happy community.
We're gonna circle back to one last thing. The last question that I've been implementing this season is you know, shit's dark lately. Things are scary. We are recording this just before the American election. There's been a series of provincial elections across Canada that have been cementing shitheads in power across the board, and it's just it's been a rough couple of years. And one thing that I have been focusing on for myself, we were talking about this before, about the idea of like, there is negativity in the world, and it's not about ignoring it. It's about saying it's there, and right now I'm going to look over here. Just for the moment, I'm going to look at something positive. And I'm curious, from in your experience, what is something that is giving you hope for the coming days, the coming, it doesn't have to be, 10 years from now. Just like, what's something that you're holding on to these days that's giving you hope to kind of keep going?
Um, well, I think that honesty is the highest level of kind of respect,
Hmm.
and being grounded in, what you believe to be true for yourself is never wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hopeful that more people will understand what they really want and the kind of world that they really think that they should have, and the kinds of things that they have in common, like, for example, how our communities kind of overlap and intersect, and um, benefit, and we grow and gain more, I think, collectively than we do in smaller chunks, fragments of society succeeding on
Mm-hmm.
their own, for their own, in their own interest solely, primarily, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what gives me hope these days? My nephew, who lives in Montreal, he's 20, he's all grown up and he's doing his thing, and he texts me back, like, when if he'll text me back, he'll be like, "Oh, I'm having a great day," and like, "I'm glad you checked in, like, love you," and stuff, and like, he means it. And that gives me hope because, he's special, and he's young, and he's so smart, and he's like got it together, and it's like we all kind of owe it to him and his friends and every single person, like all of our kind of like youth. He's 20, he's not even a youth, like, there's people out there who are 7, 8,
Yeah.
like, I think we kind of owe it to them not to walk around being like the whole world's fucked and like everything's
Yeah.
gonna be crazy, because like, we don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
um but also it's important to be honest about how like we have felt let down, and we're scared because, we don't think people are listening to us, like, there's been like a lot of like times where, people have denied our reality, which is gaslighting, which I
Mm-hmm.
think young folks understand a lot, and you're hearing a lot of people talking about that and that experience, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, like, keep your eyes on the prize, but like, they deserve like to have just as much um freedom to fail, chances to hope, and to have their hearts broken, and to change, and to be disappointed as we had. Like, we're not actually doing anybody any favors by saying don't bother. Really
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. I mean, I'm say keep going. Sorry, I'm just doing my ADHD vocal confirmations, but like,
Yeah.
please, because I'm right on board with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that gives me hope. And, other people like, yeah, like, being, my relationship gives me hope. Like, I feel very happy to be in my relationship. And I feel like uh other people's success, like my partner's success, gives me a lot of, I feel so happy. I'm just like so proud, and it makes me,
Yeah.
it's really delightful that, when things go well for them, and also for, like, it's like my nephew too, like anybody who I love, like when there's things going on for them, like my friend in Ottawa has a baby,
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's so fucking cool for her. She
Yeah.
rocks that shit and she's like totally in her light and she's like really, really excited about it. And it's great. And I'm like, I get so much energy from just being like happy and delighting in people's successes and the things that they get.
Yeah.
Um, but it's not
Because it's
easy
not
to
like
do
it
that
takes
for
away.
everybody. It's not like I feel
Yeah.
that way about everybody. I'm not like, oh, good for her. Like, you know, if someone's like a liberal
Sure.
and they get like a cool job that's not in the Liberal Party anymore, I'm like,
Yup. 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 That is, it's an interesting, like, the idea that it's like someone's success doesn't take anything away from you, right? Like, we've been conditioned to believe that it's like this like zero sum game where it's like your success is my loss, and it's not. It's like everybody gets to succeed if they, if they want to, and someone else's success takes nothing away from me. If anything, it builds me up because it's like, oh, that means it's possible. That means that means anybody could do it. That's great, right?
yeah. I mean, I just don't feel like I was necessarily raised to, and it's not like a moral judgment. Like I'm not saying like, oh, you know, we're better than this or anything like that. But I feel like in my household, like the people who brought me up, like they valued like kind of uh having being being more risk taking and being more like kind of committed to what you're doing rather than being like successful overall.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
like I think my parents would have been like, why didn't you try harder? Why didn't you care more about this? But not like, oh, you got an F. Well, you should have just done perfect,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
So
I think that's a better. I think that's a great take. I think that's a better perspective on things. Is like, just try.
it's interesting though. People suffer.
Yeah.
People are
Yeah.
very afraid to like make mistakes.
Fuck God, though. It's that thing. I mean, I think about that all the time, about the idea of like, the fear of failure is the thing that keeps us from trying, right? Because it's like, well, what if we fail? And it's like, well, yeah, you could fail at anything. You could fail at breathing right now. you know. Like, it's not, the fear of failure isn't an excuse, because to not do it is to guarantee failure. You
Well, it's just so hard and like, you know, sometimes like I feel like I fight with people, not meaning to be in like mean fights, but like, you
know.
know, we just kind of disagree. There's like a weird kind of disagreement.
Mm.
Um because I don't know. I forgot what you were saying. What did you say?
The idea of the fear of failure,
Oh
to
yeah,
not
yeah,
try.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, being afraid to fail and making it, you know, stop you from trying like at the end of the day, like you have to be able to reevaluate your definition of success
Mm.
on the fly
Mhm.
because you're not always going to be feeling great and successful in every context. You know, you can have every single thing that you wanted and still have like poor health. You know, you could have the exact career that you want and then you're stricken with some other illness and you have maybe no way to pay for that because you know you didn't think about that when you had the time or whatever. You know.
Mhm.
So ultimately I don't think it serves you to be fixated on an idea of success or a definition of success or what feels like success or whatever. You
Mhm.
know, being afraid to fail, you can just turn it into a success.
Mhm.
Failure is not an option, you
Yeah.
know?
Mhm.
Like what
Mhm.
does that mean? Like what do I fail? I embarrass myself? Oh, you know, I try something, it doesn't work, you know?
Mm.
I get, you know, fired from my job. I have to find another job. Like that's a very different kind of problem than like, oh, I tried a joke out or I thought I would be funny on James's thing and, you know, it turns out I wasn't, you know?
Yeah. I mean, well, you didn't fail at that one, so that's helpful, right?
Well, the other thing as a clown, it's like you always have to think like that the lion tamer's been eaten and you have to
Mm.
save the show.
Mhm.
Like your every minute of your time is like you're ready to be charming. And if something's not working, you never have to do it again. Like it's just you're just going.
Yeah.
So that's like so fun to have that instinct.
Hmm. Hmm. Amy, you're amazing. Thank you so much. I'm clocking the time, and I feel like I've held you held you hostage here
Oh yeah,
for
it's
you
been a
know.
long time. Well, thanks so much for
Um.
having me as a guest. I hope it was okay.
Oh my God, this is no, Amy. This was amazing, and I want to say thank you. Like I've got one last question I want to ask you before
Oh,
we wrap up. I always
okay.
love to leave listeners on like a little actionable step from the guest. But
Oh yeah.
before I do that, I do want to say like thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me and share your stories. And like you know I had a little my ADHD, one of its quirks is that like I can sort of be in multiple places at once. And as we were talking, I was having this feeling in the back of my mind of like recognizing that like this I don't even think this is maybe like this is the longest you and I have ever sat and talked. And
That's
it's
true.
been an absolute pleasure. It's just been such a joy. The like you bring such revitalizing flavor with you, and I just really this last hour really meant a lot to me, and it was
Aw.
really yeah, I just um there's something that this show has uh kind of incidentally given me, which is this gift to like re-meet all the people
Mhm,
from my life and to like
mhm.
get to like re-experience them in this new light and in this new context. And I really cherish it. I'm really grateful for it. And it was yeah, it was just really wonderful to kind of get to know you again,
Wow.
and so thank you,
Yeah, I feel
yeah.
no, I honestly feel so, so great, and I feel really thankful, and I definitely would have felt like, maybe you were, like, too cool to ever have me on your podcast. So, like, it was very, like, kind of cool and humbling to be invited to come, and I
Yeah,
just wanted it to be good. So,
it's
thank you
fabulous.
too, and your time. Like, I mean, it's great to talk to you. Like, I wish we could talk more, like, we should talk more. It'd be cool to do
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to make it out to Toronto again. We'll figure all that out.
Yeah, he just come and infect
I'll
everyone with COVID except me. So I was like
right.
fighting with Ryan because he was like, "I have COVID, you can't come over," and I was like, "I don't care, I want to see you. What are you doing?" Like, and we would fight like fucking.
Oh my God. I still feel so much embarrassment about that. The fact that I like, like for listeners, the context of that story is that I might have talked about it on the show before, but like I we had bought tickets to My Chemical Romance in 2019, and then the pandemic hit. They pushed the show back three times, two or three times, and it was finally happening. It was in Toronto. I got my ticket. I showed up. I was staying at my friend Riel and Jamie's, and Brian was going to be coming with us too. All of us, I land, and I was like, oh, I'm like, I've got like a little tickle in my throat. I don't know, it's fine. I must have just not slept well. And the next morning, I test positive for COVID, and then the next morning, everyone else tests positive for COVID, and so we all missed the show, and instead spent the week in Riel and Jamie's basement playing Fortnite. And it ruled, but it also was like, um, yeah, but yeah, it was a whole thing. It was a whole fiasco, and yeah, I became Typhoid Jimmy, and I don't know if I'll ever live that one down. But
Oh,
Amy, one last question. As I mentioned, I love to leave listeners on a bit of an actionable step that they can try out this week if they want to kind of implement something in their life. So, what is one thing listeners could try to do in their day-to-day life to be a more effective friend to themselves or to their community?
I think we should all try and embrace like the quick phone call or the like thinking of you message or the like, you know, poke, like just like a nudge, like people are very preoccupied with trying to make time and schedule everything. Like I feel like working from home and being in this weird like kind of pandemic, like our socially we're all very like trying to be structured, and it's fine for making time for people because I know that in certain relationships, you know, it kind of really makes a difference that like, you know, we block out like, you know, I'm not checking my phone, I'm not working, I'm not like in the car or whatever. You know, I have a friend who always calls me when she's in the car and I'm like, you know, you want to talk to me when you're in the car, but I'm not really, you have nothing to talk to. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, we should just be more and more inclined to do that, like even if we don't maybe have time to like actually hang out, or if you're just thinking about someone, like I'm thinking about someone right now that I like really should check in with.
Mm-hmm.
I just should. I haven't in a few weeks and I miss them.
Yeah.
But I don't
I
want
like
the anxiety of them trying to make plans to like make me avoid texting them altogether.
Right, right. But it is that idea of the flexibility, right? You know,
Yeah.
like it comes back to what you were saying before, like just like being, yeah, just being flexible. It's important to have plans. I agree, but it's also important that they don't be, steel bars. Like that they still have some give, right?
I don't want people to interact with me as if I'm demanding of them, like, you know, their full
Mm,
time and attention. Like, I'm only trying to be part of their life for like a supportive purpose.
yeah, yeah,
Most of the
yeah. So
time. I
like,
mean, unless it's like, you know, there's other contexts in which I don't really care, but like, you know.
yeah, big time, big time. Um, is there anywhere you would like listeners to find you? Anywhere do you wanna be anonymous? Do you wanna like how would you like listeners to follow you from here?
Honestly, I didn't think about it, but I guess you can follow me on LinkedIn.
Fuck yeah. This might be the first ever LinkedIn plug. All right. Fuck yeah.
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. I share some stuff on there. There's I'll give one plug if I might instead of
Please.
me, but just go online, look up the Black class action uh lawsuit against the federal government,
Mm-hmm.
and just check out what they're doing. They've recently gotten a lot of really good progress with their organization. Donate, you know, support this,
Mm-hmm.
help people amplify their work, because there's people there that have put a lot on the line to fight for justice for these workers, and it's really incredible how they've organized and what people have honestly been denied, like 26 years of service, no promotion, federal government,
God damn.
retiring with nothing, like terrible stuff.
Well, that is going in the show notes immediately. So, listeners, yeah, do check that out. Thank you for bringing that to my attention there, Amy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can
that'll
read
be in
it.
the show
You
notes
can
for
read
sure.
about it a bit if you want, and if you like it, you can share it, but you don't have to. Yeah.
100%. No, that'll be in the
Yeah.
show notes, no question. But one last time, Amy, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your stories, and I appreciate you coming on the show.
Okay. See ya. Bye, baby.
And that's it. Thank you one more time to Amy for coming on the show. It was such a pleasure to chat with her. And thank you also to her for her patience while I had my little brain runarounds before finally releasing this episode. On that note, actually, there has been one update around the class action lawsuit that Amy brings up near the end of the episode. I've cited an article that gives an update on the status, but the sort of summary of it is that it was dismissed due to being basically too broad. And the more I'm learning about this case, the more furious I'm becoming about that decision. I've included a couple resources within the show notes for you to learn more and try to get involved, try to raise some awareness about what's going on with this. And let's not let that stand. But that's going to do it for me this week. Thank you so much for listening, and I really hope to catch you back here next week. But hey, as always, I'm not going to worry about that, and neither should you, because that is then, and this is now. So for now, I'll just say I love you, and I wish you well. Fun and safety, sweeties.